let's go ahead and get started. Oh, Linda, welcome. I'm going to throw the sign-in sheet in the chat if you get a chance. Are you new to Synergy Sync, Linda, or have you used it before? Oh, she left. Okay, that's all right. Let me go ahead and present my screen. So Synergy Sync, as you are probably aware, is a process that is supposed to allow your Synergy Gradebook to talk to your Google Classroom and automatically transfer grades. When it's set up correctly, it works really, really well. However, there's a lot of little problems that can occur that if you miss some setups or you're using a few of the tools incorrectly, it can lead to all sorts of havoc. So hopefully we can go through and kind of solve these issues before they become an issue. So let's talk first about the two ways that you can do a Synergy Sync with Google Classroom. So option one, and the one that a lot of teachers like to do, is they will actually set up their Google Classroom over the summer ahead of time before they even have a roster or sections assigned in Synergy or anything. Now that can be done easily enough. So if you're here in Google Classroom and you create your new class, and so I'm going to call this Ingenuity Summer School US History. All right, and now you don't have to add section numbers if you don't want to. You don't even have to add subjects or room numbers. Those are all options. And then you create that class. So now, again, this is how you can do it if you want to set your classroom up before you have your Synergy available. The most important part here is this class code right here. That class code is what you're going to use for the Synergy Sync. When you do the sync, the great thing about it is it's going to go ahead and populate all of your students for you. So you don't have to have students use the join code, which is that code that we just looked at. You don't have to have students insert this code. They're automatically going to be added to your class. Now, a few things I will mention. The first time you sync Synergy is the only time it will collect students into the roster. If students are dropped after you've done the sync, you must manually drop them from your Google Classroom. If students are added to your Synergy after your initial sync, you need to manually add them to Google Classroom. And the best way to do that, if you're unfamiliar, is have students go to classroom.google.com. And then from here, they're going to click on this plus and choose join a class. And then you're going to give them that class code to join in. They will already have been added to your Synergy by your administration. Once you add them into Google Classroom, then that student gets synced as well. But the sync will not add new students after the initial sync. So that's important to note. Okay. And if you have questions or comments as I'm going, please feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. So now that we've got this class created right here, let me open it up. In Synergy, this is what you would do. So I'm going to go to my Synergy. In Synergy, you're going to go to your gradebook, main. And then step one, and it is the most important step. If you skip this step, everything else goes wrong. You're going to click up here on the rainbow G. Now, by default, Synergy Sync is turned on, but now you just need to tell it what classes to connect to. Okay, so it used to be in the old days that this G was grayed out until you turned it on. It's now on automatically. So you're going to click on the little rainbow G, and you'll see that it's already connected to Google. You want to make sure that this, the gustafson_k@aps.edu, or whatever your email is the one that shows up here, because that is what your Google Classroom is going to be using. Then you're going to click on this little gear. This is going to take you to the classroom settings. Now, let's talk about each of these settings and how you want to use them. Session autosync. It is recommended that you turn session autosync on. What this does is the first time you open Synergy, it does an autosync with Google. Now, it only automatically syncs the first time you open Synergy each time. If I open Synergy 10 times a day, it's going to autosync every time. If you find that that autosync is slowing down your gradebook process, you can always turn that off. Okay? Generally, I like to have it on because that way the sync is just always happening. Every time I open my gradebook, it compares the gradebook to Google, pulls over all the new stuff, and we're done. Default assignment type. This is going to be pulled from your Synergy Gradebook. So in your Synergy Gradebook, and let me diverge for a minute here. If you go into your, and of course, if you've done your, Gradebook Setup, then in here you've created all of your assignment types. Now you'll notice that mine only has 2 assignment types. It has assignments and final grades. If you've created 15 assignment types, then Synergy is going to know this, right? So what you want to do is in these Google settings for your default assignment type, make sure you pick the one from this list that you are going to use most frequently. So it'll all depend on you. For some teachers, it's classwork or homework or daily work or whatever it is. So for me, it's assignments. Default point value. This is the first and biggest mistake most teachers make. By default, it's set to this, set to a specific number. And then for some reason, for most teachers, it ends up being 10. This can be a huge problem if you make assignments that are worth more than 10 points. So no matter what you do, change this default point value to match max score value. So you want default point value to be set to match max score value. This way, when you create an assignment in Google Classroom and you say this assignment is worth 50 points, Synergy knows it's worth 50 points. If the next one's worth 35, Synergy knows that. If you leave it set to the default, it's always going to assume every assignment is worth whatever value is set there, no matter what it's really worth. So you want this set to match max score value.
Hey, Kern.
Yes.
What happens if you give extra credit so that, let's say your max score is 100 points? Can you give like 110 or 150?
Generally with Synergy, you can in Google for sure, but what Synergy generally has a problem with is if the maximum score the student earns is more than 15 points above the max value, it'll consider that invalid. So if you want to do extra credit, and I can show you when we get into Google Classroom, if you want to give extra credit, you usually want to do that as a separate assignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. So this next one, sync block phrase. If you ever wanted to create an assignment in Google Classroom that you do not want to sync with Google, you would use this sync block phrase. Now, by default, it's usually #NoSync, but you can change it to anything you want. And then in Google Classroom, in the assignment description, you would include this phrase. And of course, you'll notice all these have little question marks. So it says include this exact phrase in the instruction field in Google Classroom. Assignments will prevent the assignment from syncing. I never use this because if I don't want it in my gradebook, I usually create something different in Google, and we'll talk about that. All right, scores of 0. With scores of 0, you've got a lot of different choices here. Generally, I recommend leaving it at leaves zeros without a comment code. If you change this to anything else, then whenever a student gets a 0, they're going to have this whatever comment you put in here. Now, a lot of teachers like to put incomplete. So when they give a 0 in the grade book, it automatically adds a comment of incomplete. That's totally up to you. It's not going to mess up the sync no matter what you do. But if you do choose one of these comments, realize every time you give a 0, that comment is going to be added. So I always leave mine to leaves 0s without a comment.
So does that mean then I can go in and put whatever comment I want on that?
Yes, ma'am. You can always go back in through Synergy and add comment.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Now, overriding with blanks. With overriding with blanks, leave that set to allows blanks to overwrite. What that means is that in Google Classroom, a blank score is going to be transferred, is not going to be transferred to Synergy. So it's going to stay blank in Synergy as well. That's what you want to do. This is a big mistake a lot of teachers make. If you leave stuff ungraded in Synergy or in Google Classroom, excuse me, if you leave things ungraded in Google Classroom, they are going to stay ungraded in Synergy. You have to make sure that you never leave an assignment blank in Google Classroom. You eventually want to add a grade, whether it be a 0, a 1, a 2, 100, whatever it is. Because if you leave it blank, then it leaves it blank in the in Synergy. And then, you know, basically it's a null grade, which of course a lot of administrators, again, I was a high school teacher for 24 years, excuse me. If I left a student's grade blank in the grade book, my administration usually was not happy about that. So they wanted there to always be a grade. We'll talk a little bit more about what you can do in Synergy if you want to use the excused option, because you cannot enter an X into Google Classroom. Google Classroom only accepts numbers. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, this last piece, this is new as of last year. Any of you who were using Google Sync last year ran into this problem where, gosh, it was, I think in April, all of a sudden their Google Classroom started duplicating and they were getting 10, 15, 20, 30 copies of each Google Classroom. So this delete classes from Google Classroom, don't touch this section. If you ever start seeing Google Classrooms get duplicated, contact us in EdTech or contact SIS, and we will help you use this tool to get rid of those duplicates. But you want to avoid using this delete classes from Google Classroom unless you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, and they may end up taking this down for this coming school year, but at least for now it's still here. All right, so once you've got all those settings done, you can click done. All right, are there any questions on this section? Because this is the biggest section. Once you've started syncing, you never want to change these things because it'll wreak havoc on your gradebook. So you got to do this day one or not at all. Like I said, we had a lot of people last year who left this set to a specific score of 10. Then they'd give an assignment that was worth 100 points, and Google would say, hey, they earned 100 out of 10 points. Well, that means they earned, what, 1,000%? And all of a sudden, their grades were totally skewed and goofed up. Linda, did you have a question?
Oh, that was me, I think. I don't know.
Okay.
Definitely. So I just... Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I just had a question about the delete classes. So I had that happen where it was all of a sudden I had like these extra classes. Mm-hmm. Are you saying that that is going to happen again in the like for the second semester? Are they going to create new classes again, or because what I actually did is I was looking at, I'm like, wait, these are different class codes. So I actually deleted, I can't remember what I did exactly, but I put the class that I wanted, that class code into the new one, or I can't tell exactly what I did, but it worked because with the class code, I just made sure it was a correct one. But anyway, but it was very confusing. So
We are not expecting that to happen again this year. What happened was Synergy ran an update, and that update created a conflict with Google, which is what created all these duplicates to be made.
Okay.
We believe that that problem has been solved. So unless some other update comes out this year that causes the same problem again, it shouldn't occur. Synergy is now aware of the problem, as is Google. So we don't anticipate having that problem again, but best laid plans of mice and men. It could, but like I said, I wouldn't touch this section, this delete classes from Google, unless you hear from somebody in EdTech or SIS that needs to be worked with.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All
Thanks.
right, excellent. Let me turn something on here that I realized I don't have turned on. There we go. Okay, all right. It's not going to work, but that's all right. Okay, so once you've got all these settings done, you're going to click Done. You never have to touch those settings again unless you decided that you wanted to go in here. And the one setting you can change whenever you want to is this sync session auto sync. Like I say, if it's really slowing down the process, because a lot of you who have used it before know the first time you log in, it shows all those little green progress bars. Sometimes they can move really slow, especially when the network is getting bogged down around the time grades are due. If that's really slowing down your process, you can turn that on and off as you want to, but don't touch any of these other settings once you've started syncing. All of these other settings need to be left alone. All right. So we've got our settings set up. Now we're ready to do our sync. To do the sync, you are going to go to Gradebook, and then you are going to go to Gradebook Setup. Okay, Gradebook, and then Gradebook Set. No. I just had a brain fart. Yes, I'm sorry. You're going to go to Gradebook, Gradebook Setup. My computer's glitching on me. Here in the Gradebook Setup tab, you want to go to the Class Settings tab. Okay, so we go to Gradebook, Gradebook Setup. Then once you get to this window, go to the Class Settings tab. In the Class Settings tab, you will have all of your course sections. Now, of course, you won't be able to do this until your administration releases your courses, which for high school teachers usually occurs a day or two before school starts. For middle schools, it's usually around the same time. I have no idea when elementary schools do it. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure on that. Then in here, you'll notice that you've got your class name. You've got the term. Now, high school teachers, most of you know that each semester you get a brand new section number. So, for example, first semester Algebra 1 is like section 32201, and then second semester is 32202. So you'll have to do this all over again the second semester for high school teachers. Middle school teachers may not have to, though we recommend it. I'll talk more about that later. You'll notice by default, Google Classroom is turned off. So what you want to do is bring your mouse all the way over here to the left-hand side underneath Edit, and this little Edit button is going to show up. Notice when I'm not hovered there, that little blue button isn't there. But as soon as I hover over it, that blue button shows up. I'm going to click Edit Row. Once I click Edit Row, I want to come to this Google Classroom slider and click it to enable Google Classroom. Okay, we're going to click it to enable Google Classroom. Then we want to click on the little caret here, this little downward facing arrow to open the advanced options. Here is the class code. If you pre-made your Google Classroom like this, you need to take this code, copy it, and paste it into that box exactly as it appears here. So I literally just do a copy and paste. That is going to tell Synergy to go to Google Classroom and look for this class code. And that's what creates the link. Okay? Then you want to make sure sync student roster is on. Make sure that sync assignments is on. You want sync scores to be turned on. And then this port is really important. Right here where it says sync Google assignments from, that should be the first day of the semester. Okay, so I think, and let me think when this is going to be for us. Let me go to my calendar. Calendars.
Should be the 11th.
The 11th? Okay, thank you. So then in here, you're going to click that. You're going to switch that over to August 11th. A quick note, it will not let you type that in, and it will not let you set it to a date that occurs after the current day. Notice when I click, it's not changing it. So you can't do this sync until after the school year has started. Okay, you cannot do the sync until after the school year has started. So this is my summer school class. So for me, it actually started on June 28th. Okay, so that was the first day I would sync. But you want to set it to the first day of your semester. All right. Once you've got that done, you're going to click save. And what's going to happen, you'll notice as soon as I click save, is it's going to start syncing. It says setting up Google Classroom, and now it's going to do the sync process. And it's going through and it syncs the grades, or I'm sorry, it syncs Google, it's creating a cache, and it runs through this process. It takes a few minutes depending upon how many classes you've done. For me, it's already done, and now I can see that Google Classroom is on. Okay? If I look at the advanced settings, my code is there, everything's good to go. And now if I go to my Edgenuity summer class and I look at the people, all of my students have been added. Okay, it automatically added all my students. If I look at the gradebook, I don't have any assignments in there yet, so there's no students added, or there's no grades added yet. Okay, your sync is now complete and ready to go. Now, we'll talk about using it here in a minute. But before I move on, are there any questions on that process? All right. Now, there is a second option when you create this sync. If you want Synergy to create your class for you, instead of you having to manually create your Google Classroom, you can do that. The only difference would be when you come into class settings and you do the settings, you would leave this blank. And if you leave that class code blank, then as soon as you click save, Synergy tells Google Classroom, I need you to create this class. And then you're going to have a new Google Classroom show up. So if you'll notice here, if I click save, it's syncing a brand new class. And if I go to, and we'll see if it works. Let's see. Now, see, it already knew that I had a classroom set up. But if I hadn't already created this classroom in Google, it would have created one for me. Now, I'll be honest with you, I would not let Synergy set this up for you. You are better off as a teacher pre-making your Google Classroom and then taking this code right here, taking that code, copying it, and then pasting it into Synergy in the class code tab. Okay, that's going to work better every time. Okay, because then you're sure. The other great thing is then it allows you in Google Classroom to go through and pick your colors and do all of your headings and all that for you. you can set all that up yourself instead of letting Google do it for you. All right. Questions on any of this stuff so far?
I have a question, Karen.
Yes, ma'am.
If for some reason, you know, if a teacher says, well, I don't want to put in the number and I want Synergy to do it.
Uh-huh.
What's the difference? What does Synergy do if it makes its own Google Classroom?
Really, all it does is it's going to create something that looks just like this. It's going to put all the students in it. Okay, it's going to do all of that. The only difference is it's just going to pick some random heading. You're not going to have any initial control over any of the settings. Whereas if you set it up yourself the first time through, then you can go through here and make sure you set all these things up. You can come into Google Classroom and do your blanket settings in here and have that all set ahead of time. So it's beneficial because you know everything that's set up in your Google Classroom because you did it. Where if you let Synergy do it, it applies a generic set of rules that you may or may not want. And in the end, you can always go in and change them later. But I personally find it easier to set it up right the first time than to have to go back and go, oh, crap, how did I want it? Because now the settings look different than what you wanted.
Okay, and if for some reason that teachers want to set it up with Synergy, can you change up the titles, or it's pretty much?
No, if you let Synergy set it up, then what Synergy is going to do is it's going to apply the name that was applied in the Synergy section. So it may end up being called U.S. History, 332210/S1. So it's going to give it that big old long convoluted name. And you can go in and change it, but then that can cause problems with the sync. So that's why I like to create it on my own, is I control the title, I control the settings. My kids don't have to go, why does your class have this weird name? It's 3322987 U.S. History VVHS. Why isn't it just called U.S. History? Well, because Synergy said this is what the class is called, because that's how your administration had to plug it into Synergy to make it work. Because when they plug it into Synergy, they have to add section numbers and based on semester and this and that and all the sorts of stuff that I don't understand and really don't want to know, which is why I'm not an administrator.
Okay, sorry, and then one more question. Okay, if everything is synced and I put my title in, I have it exactly and then I change it, do you recommend not doing that, or do I have the flexibility of doing that, or?
Once you've started the sync, don't change anything.
Okay.
Don't go in and change the name of your class. Don't go in and start changing assignment titles. Once the sync has started, any changes you make can throw the whole shebang into a tailspin. Because all of a sudden Synergy syncs and goes, hey, there was an assignment that used to be called this, but now it's missing, but there's a new assignment called this, and it starts trying to double sync, or it breaks the sync, and it just becomes a nightmare. Yolanda.
My question tails onto that. Let's say you did create this and all hooked up, but then you, for whatever reason, said, wait, this is all wrong. Can one delete the classroom and start all over again?
You can.
Only maybe at the early part of the year, not in the middle of the year.
If you haven't started inserting grades, yes. Okay. Once you've started inserting grades, no.
Okay.
Once you put your first grade in and it's synced, any changes you make has the potential for
disaster. Okay.
Yeah.
So
now, if right now,
okay.
Right now, if I haven't set up any grades or anything and I go, oh man, I made a mistake, then I can come in here, I can edit this row and I can say, crap, turn it off. Turn it off. I don't want to do that. And I save it. And now the sync is broken. In that case, I can then come to Google Classroom and I can say, oh man, let me get back to classes. I didn't want this class. That was horrible. I'm going to archive it and get rid of it. Okay, it's gone. It no longer exists. I go back into Synergy I turn this on. I enable it. Notice that it's blank now. And I click OK, save. And now it's setting up a new Google Classroom. Because the old one was gone and I totally broke the sync. But I hadn't entered any grades into Google Classroom yet. It's the only reason I can get away with this right now. See, and now, remember, in Google Classroom, I didn't have anything. I didn't set up a classroom. So now I'm letting Synergy create it for me. Okay, and it says it's created it. So let's come here. There it is. Now notice the new class name. It's Gustafson, K, US History /GO2. So to me, that's name is going to be more confusing to my students. And now I don't really want to go in and change it because I could cause problems. So that's why I like to make everything first and then sync it. And it takes some time and you want to be really deliberate about everything you do. Because I love the Synergy sync. Well, after last year, I don't love it so much. But I loved it as a teacher as long as I set it up right because it took time. It took less time. I graded something in Google, it all went straight over and I was, woo, done, happy. But if you make those mistakes, it'll be the bane of your existence for the entire school year. It really will. I see Risa is nodding and laughing because I think it was the bane of her existence for a large chunk of last year. But now, you know, notice it's all set up, but the name is different. It put in this weird coffee house graphic header, which has nothing to do with US history. The people are all there. That's fine. But that's not how I like to do it. That's not to say that you can't do what I just did because it set up a perfectly good Google Classroom. It gave it a name. Notice it included the section number, which is okay. And you could have done that when you set it up yourself. I just hate the title it gives it. I don't like that I don't have control. Maybe I'm a little bit too much of a control freak, but I like having that control of the setup from the get-go. Yes, Gerald.
Well, a couple of questions. One was back when we're setting up the general setup and you don't change anything. But I thought it said you could go in and change what you wanted the 0 to say.
Oh, so yeah, if you go in here to, okay, let me go back to Synergy. So you're talking about in here where it says leave zeros without a comment code?
Right.
Right. You can change that. If I want every time a student gives a 0 for it to add a comment of incomplete,
right,
or for it to add a comment of missing, I can add that here.
Yeah, we can change that without messing it up.
Right. Though if you're going to be changing it, I would just leave it as leave 0 without a comment code, and that way you can just go in and add what you want.
Okay.
Because you could go in and add additional ones, but if I've said always mark everything with a 0 incomplete, I can't go into the gradebook and take incomplete off later.
Okay.
It's always going to be there because that's what I told it to do.
I see. So, yeah.
So I always leave this as leave it with zeros because sometimes it wasn't that it was incomplete or whatever. There was a good reason for it. So I always like to control my comments later on a student by student basis. That's just me. If you got a comment that you always want applied with that 0, this is a great place to do that. But notice that it only pulls comments out of the Synergy comment bank.
Okay.
So you can't create a custom comment because most of my comments were always custom.
Right.
You know, I'd go in and type out a comment or whatever, and you can't do that here.
Okay.
Okay?
And then I guess I missed something about so every assignment you put into the Google Classroom will automatically sync over. But I'm confused because I've never done this. You still have to put it in the Synergy. You still have to list it there, or it automatically lists the assignment and the grade.
So it automatically, so let me show you. If I now go to my Google Classroom, okay, and I create an assignment. So I'm going to create an assignment here, and I'm going to call this is just a test, because this is a live class, so I need to go through and delete this later. Ignore this. It is for training purposes only, right? And I give it a point value of whatever I want. I'm going to make this worth 50 points. Whoops, 50 points. I'm going to give it a due date of today. All right. I'm not going to create a topic for this. Now, as soon as I assign this, okay, now notice it's now an assignment in here. If I look in my Synergy Gradebook, it's not there because it already synced, right? But if I click sync from Google,
Okay.
then it's going to do a sync and that assignment is going to show up.
Okay.
Okay, and it's going to show up, but all the grades are going to be blank because I haven't graded it yet. Let's see, now here it is. And it's got a little rainbow G over it telling me that it is synced to Google. Notice that these two assignments have a little I over them. That's because they're not synced with Google. Now, this brings up a really, really good point, and I just broke a really severe rule, but I did it for training purposes and I can correct it, so it's okay. Once you have started the Google Sync, you never, ever, ever want to create an assignment in Synergy. Once you have started the Google Sync, all assignments should be created only in Google Classroom. Okay, you're never going to want to create anything in Synergy after that. So even if, let's say, I've got a transfer student that comes in from, Timbuktu, and he comes in with a B, so now I have to create a new assignment. So I create a new assignment called Transfer Grade for Bobby. Okay, this is Bobby's transfer grade. I know my English is horrible here, but that's okay. And then I know that he's got an 80%, and I've had a total of 1,000 points available in the class. So I make this worth 1,000, and I assign it. Okay, and then in Synergy, I sync that over. And it takes a minute to sync. It's this great Synergy sync waiting game. Now, when I go in here, I'm going to go back to Synergy. I'm going to go to the gradebook, and I am only going to give Bobby a grade. Now, Bobby doesn't exist here. For all of the other students, I am going to come in here, and I'm going to leave it blank. But I'm going to come into Synergy. Now, this is where it gets a little convoluted, so if I need to repeat it, let me know. Because I only want to apply this to Bobby, I'm going to open up this grade, and I am going to click Enter Scores. Then, notice up here it says Google is locked. I need to unlock all assignments in this class. Then, I'm going to exclude everybody but Bobby. Now, again, I don't have Bobby, but let's say this was Bobby. So I'm going to exclude everybody but Bobby, and I'm going to save and return to the gradebook. So when I do this, now I see everybody's excused except for my fictional Bobby. But notice the little slash through the G. Can you see that? How? Let's see if I can do. Yeah, the little G has a slash through it.
Mm-hmm.
That means Synergy Sync is turned off. I now need to click on that and turn the sync back on. So let's see if it's going to do it for me. Nope. I'm going to have to go in and edit the assignment, and I'll get your question in just a minute, Kathleen. And then I am going to lock all assignments in this class, save it. And now, let me zoom back out. Now my classes are all synced again. And when I insert Bobby's grade here of an 80, that grade's going to go in, but everybody else is excused. But I need to make sure I turn the sync back on or nothing else is going to sync. Kathleen, you had a question, and then Geraldine.
Yeah, for that particular case, with the one student that will have the assignment, would it have worked to only assign it to him or the particular student in Google Classroom? Would that have the same effect?
That would. Yes, you could have done that, is when I came in here, and that's actually a good point. Sadly enough, that never occurred to me until you just said it. But that would absolutely make sense. When I create that new assignment, then instead of giving it to all students, I just assigned it to Bobby. Then it'll only be assigned to Bobby in Synergy, and everybody else will be excused from it. So you're absolutely right. That would be the perfect way to do that. I wished I had thought of it. But
okay, so yeah, I just wanted to double check because I just get so confused with Synergy. My God. Yeah, and I'm always, anyway. So yeah, so in that case, you wouldn't have to go in there and do all the excuse students the way you just did, correct? To take the one.
Because with this one, let's try this. So I'm going to come in here and I'm only going to assign it to, let's just assign it to Vaney here. Whoops. Two. Okay, and then I assign it, and it's only being assigned to that one student. I come to Synergy, and I sync it. And here's the big test. So it still showed up in the gradebook for everybody. So I'm still going to have to go through and excuse everybody. Okay, so it's still, Synergy still pulled it over for everybody, even though Google only assigned it to Vaney. Synergy just saw it as an assignment and pulled it over for everybody. So I'm still going to have to come in here now, and I'm going to have to enter scores, and I'm going to have to unlock all the assignments, and I'm going to have to exclude everybody but Vaney, and then save it. And then click on the assignment, edit assignment, lock all assignments, save. And now that's done.
Okay, so that's good to know. But just a question though. I'm sorry, maybe I missed this, but why did you hit lock assignment on there?
Well, what I have to do, if I have to go in and alter grades in Synergy, if I try to just go in here and grade, so I click enter scores, right now it's locked, so it won't let me enter any grades. Because right now, the way I've set it up, it will only accept grades from Google.
Okay, okay.
So I have to unlock it so that now I can, well, why is it not letting me enter grades? Oh, and look, see how it says it's a max of 50 out of 10?
Okay.
That's going to cause problems too, and that's from that little rainbow G up here. So I'm going to just cancel that and return to the grade button.
Okay.
Right, and this is where I made that mistake of in here, I left that set to a specific number when I needed it set to a max score value. I don't know why I can't say that combination of words well. But what I've just done again is a no-no because I've already started transferring grades, and notice it's not going to affect any of those that are there because those were already synced, and it's not going to change the rule. Everything new is going to go ahead and change, but the old ones are not. So that's why I say these settings right here are of the utmost importance, because if you screw up here, you're screwed up for the rest of the year. Okay, once you've started the sync.
All right, thank you. That was good, and I'm glad you're kind of making these helpful mistakes that I've been making. So thank you.
And that absolutely, and it's great. You know, I wish I could say I did that one on purpose. I didn't, but you know, these are the mistakes that aren't going to hurt anybody because I can make them now without screwing anybody up. But for during the regular year, if you make those mistakes, like I say, it just makes it a nightmare for the rest of the year. It really does.
Okay.
So, Geraldine, you had a question?
Right. So it was kind of answered, but one. having to go in there and do that, maybe it's a more request than a question.
Okay.
If I'm watching this presentation again, but I want to do it step by step while I'm actually doing it, not on a split screen because my vision isn't that great. I mean, it's not that bad, but somehow having just for this process where you have one, because wouldn't this be the same if you're adding an extra credit? You'd have to do the same thing for only one kid, extra credit. Or if you're adding, say somebody got a 0 and then you're letting them resubmit. Or, you know, and often I have kids resubmit things for a second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so only one may choose to do that and another not. So isn't this the process I would have to do every time I do those little things?
Not necessarily, because for a grade resubmission, so let's say that for this is just a test 2, that was only assigned to one student. So let me just go to this one. Nope, this one. So this one, let's say that I've done the grades, right? And everybody's received 0s or everybody's received the grades, but Vani here originally got a 0.
Okay.
And then a week later, she redoes it and she gets an 80. I can just change the grade here. And when it resyncs, it's going to change the grade here.
Okay. But for extra credit, we'd have to do the process you just, for one kid, assignment only. So,
right. Though for extra credit, what I would generally do is I would come to classwork, I would create an assignment, and then in here, I would create an assignment that was worth 0 points. And then, oh, that's going to change it to ungraded. No. So I want to create it maybe worth 1 point. I guess you could do the way you're talking about too, depending on what's more comfortable for you. If I now came in and let's say that Vani, who's got a 90 out of 100 here, let's say that she earns extra credit, 20 points, and now this is a 110. Then I could come in here, you're right, and I could enter scores, and I could unlock. This one's not synced, but I'd have to unlock, and then I could change this to a 110, save it,
okay.
then go back and relock it.
Okay.
So
But-
yes, you could do that.
So for that process, if I had that process just for that part in writing, like where you see little bullets where like click here, click here, click here, click here as bullets, that would be much more helpful for me in that written form than to have to watch the video, because I won't remember how to do all, I mean, I
Sure.
didn't write it down just now. I'm not going to remember, especially if I'm stressed and I'm in prep and I'm trying to hurry to do something. I mean, having that little bullet thing is that possible?
Yeah, I can work on put something like that together for sure.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
That'd
absolutely.
be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'll work on putting something like that together and then get that out for other people
Okay.
so that it's available to people. Matter of
Thank
fact, what I think we're going to do is on our EdTech website. I need to talk to my supervisors, but maybe we can set up a little Synergy Sync troubleshooting page
That'd be great. Yeah.
and include some documentation like that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's see. I see a couple of other hands raised, so let's go with Kathleen.
Hi, thanks. So this is just about my thought about that extra credit assignment. Could you create just an extra credit assignment, and anytime somebody does extra credit, you just put points in there, but all the other kids are just blank, and then it wouldn't affect their grade because it would just keep it blank in Synergy. Is that how that would work?
In theory, yes. Though if your administration is like mine, they won't be happy with the fact that there's an assignment in there with no grade for kids. So I would have to go in and convert all those blanks to the X's for excused.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Or of course I could go in and give all those kids 0s because it would be a 0 out of 0, and so it wouldn't hurt them. But then of course kids and parents freak out because there's a 0 in the grade. So I would probably go through and add all the X's. Now, if you've got an administration who doesn't care that you've got blanks in there because they go, oh, it's an extra credit, I understand, then that's cool. And that's going to kind of be in a case-by-case basis depending upon your administration. My principal at the high school I was at was very into there should never be a blank in the grade book. Because if it was assigned, they either did it or they didn't, or you excused them from doing it. But a blank tells me nothing happened. That was my administration's take on it. And so fair enough. So we just, that's what I worked with.
Okay,
But
well,
administration's okay.
on that note, I don't grade all of my assignments that I had last year. I had assignments that weren't I didn't put grades in. So I actually did have a number of blanks in Synergy. Now in Google Classroom, you could see that there were no, not necessarily any points attached to it or whatever, but
Right.
so everybody gave me a hard time about it, but I did have those.
Yeah, and that's okay, because like I said, then in that case, it sounds like you've got administration who's okay with that. What I recommend to teachers is if you're going to give an assignment that you're not intending on grading, then in Google Classroom, when you create assignments, and this is really important to notice or to note, when you create an assignment, the only assignments that will transfer with a sync are assignments and quiz assignments. Anything called question or material will not sync to Synergy. So you could create stuff in Google Classroom and call it a question or a material, give a whole assignment, all this and that, and it doesn't matter whether you grade it or not because it's never going to show up in Synergy anyway.
Oh, but also I just remembered, but you talked about this. There's a code or something where it doesn't sync, right? It's
right.
Like
right, and that's up here. Is you could, if you wanted an assignment that you didn't want to sync, then what you would do is you'd write the assignment, and in the instructions, you would include whatever code you have there. In the case of mine, it's #NoSync. So I could create an assignment, right? Here, we'll do this. We'll create an assignment, and we're going to just call this one Testy Test. And in the instructions, I'm going to put #NoSync. Okay? And then I'm going to give it a due date, right? We'll do the whole 9 yards. We'll give it a due date. We'll make it worth 1,000 points. And I assign it to everybody. And then I come to Synergy. And let me close that. And I do my sync. And Testy Test should not show up. Now, we'll see if it works the way it should. But it shouldn't show up because I added that #NoSync into the instructions. So there you go. Testy Test still didn't show up, because I added that #NoSync to my instructions, telling Synergy, ignore this, don't pull it over.
Okay, perfect. That really solves a problem there. So thank you.
Yeah, but it's still here in Google Classroom for all my students to see and do. But I'm just not going to put it in the gradebook. And the great thing here is, because I did the same thing, I had assignments I gave to my kids because they needed to know it. It was good reinforcement and learning, but I didn't want to give them a grade on it. It was just reinforcing a skill. And so I do something like that, though I usually would assign it. I just created like material assignments or whatever, because that way it didn't sync that way either. But if you want students to see it as an assignment and they think it's for a grade and therefore it's really important, and you just add that #NoSync. Now, of course, this is going to be painfully obvious to my students, so I probably would have buried it in the instruction somewhere if I was trying to be sneaky. Does that help then, Kathleen?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That is actually, I think that's going to be really helpful going forward. Although no one gave me a hard time about it last year, but
I had an administration that was very much about paperwork. And so I think they were maybe CPAs or something in a previous life. So they were very into their paperwork.
Yeah. Well, it'll totally clean up my Synergy, because it was a little bit confusing even for me. So I think that'll make it a lot simpler to look at on the Synergy side.
Perfect. All right. Linda, you've got a question, and then Risa.
Yes, Ken, I'm sorry that I clicked the wrong button and hung up on us, but can you put that sign-in sheet in, please?
Sure. Let me put the sign-in sheet here. And there we go. Did you have another question, or was that it, Linda?
That was it. Thank you.
Sure. Risa.
Okay, getting back to extra credit.
Uh-huh.
Didn't I hear that from you that if, let's say that you have 50 points that's worth on a particular assignment, can you add the extra credit, like an extra 5 points on top of that
You
in
can
Google
easily-
Classroom without it
Yes.
messing up in Synergy?
Yes, but if you add more than about 20 points above the maximum, that will tend to cause Synergy to reject that grade. So when you're doing extra credit, if you're trying to give like 100 points worth of extra credit, it's not going to sync over properly. So that is one of the issues with Synergy Sync, is if you're somebody who gives a lot of extra credit, it might not be worth doing a Synergy Sync because it really gets messy. Because what you don't want to do, and this is really important, is I never want to get in here and create a new assignment. All right. Extra credit test. And right, I'm going to make this worth, it's an assignment, but I'm going to make it worth 0 points. 0 points available. And then I'm going to assign this. Oops, max points, 0 points available. I save it. And so now, come on. Oh, max score must be greater than 0. That's because I can change this from normal to an extra credit. Save assignment. All right. So I'm going to give a max. See, you can tell I don't do this. A maximum of 100 points extra credit. Let's say save assignment. I don't generally want to do this because now what Google's going to try and do is this grade's going to try and transfer back to Google, because it's going to want to, Google's going to say, hey, I don't have this. I want to do this. But Google can't do it. And it's going to totally break it. So you never want to create an assignment in Synergy. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that assignment out right away. You never want to create an assignment in Synergy because it's going to break your sync. Or it's going to mess up your sync. So extra credit, if you're somebody that does a lot of extra credit, especially anything more than maybe 20 points on top of an assignment, you might not want to do the Synergy sync. Because I find that, oh, and see here, I even broke it with what I did. Let's see if it'll load back up. Here we go. Looks like it's coming back. Let's see if the gradebook is still okay. Come on, gradebook. It's Synergy. Sorry, I just got to be patient. I forget. So that's, that's going to be important. Now, let's see. How much time have we got? We've got set to go to 11:40, right? I think that's what we're scheduled till. Weighted grades. This is really, really important. If you are a teacher who does weighted grades, so like here in mine, I've got my gradebook set up, and I am running a weighted gradebook because, well, I'm not currently, but let's say that I was running a weighted gradebook so that assignments were worth 80% of the semester grade, final exams were worth 20%. 20, good God, 20%. All right, and yeah, it adds up to 100 now. It's okay. Yay, thank you. I'll move out of the way. All right, so I've set that up. If you're going to run weighted grades here, you also need to run weighted grades in Synergy or in Google Classroom. Here's how you set up weighted grades in Google Classroom. In Google Classroom, I'm going to come to the settings, and then I'm going to come down to grading, and I'm going to add grade categories. And I want to make sure my grade categories here are identical to my grade categories here. So I'm going to take this one called assignments, and I'm going to copy it because it's even case sensitive. So I'm going to copy assignments into here, and I'm going to make sure that they're worth 80% here. Oh, that's default points. No, sorry. They've taken away. No overall grade. Oh, weighted by category. There we go. I have to change this to weighted by category. Thank you. And then I'm going to make it worth 80% here. Then I'm going to come back to my gradebook and look. Okay, my other one is called final exam. Again, it's important that the F and the E are capitalized. And I go to my Google Classroom, and I add a grade category, and I call it final exam, and I make it worth 20%. Then I'm going to save that. Now, when I'm creating assignments in here, it's going to be important that when I do the assignment, that I give this the title, right? It's going to be testy, testy, test. And then in my instructions, I'm going to give la, 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 la. And then I want to put the name of the category in the instructions. Final exam. All right. And then when I assign this, won't be included overall grade. Wait, what happened? Oh, now I need to choose the grade category. That's why. So that if I say it's a final exam and I add it to final exam and I assign it, then when I go to Synergy and I go to my gradebook, cancel. Why are we not saving? Oh, update. Thank you. And then I go to my gradebook main and I wait patiently. And then I do a sync. It's going to come in as the correct category. So you'll see as soon as the sync finishes, it now has come in as a final exam, which means it's going to be weighted appropriately. But if I don't set those weights up in here, then that's going to be a problem. Now, if you're running an unweighted gradebook, then you don't have to worry about this. But if you're running a weighted gradebook, make sure that your categories here, it's set to weighted by category. Everything here exactly matches everything here. Okay, has to match title exactly, weight exactly. Now, the other thing is do not turn on show overall grade to students in Google. Do not turn that on. There are some teachers who like to because they like their students to be able to check their overall grade in Google Classroom. The problem is, and we can't for the life of us figure out why, sometimes what Google Classroom shows and what Synergy shows are not the same thing. And usually the Google Classroom grade ends up being better than the Synergy grade. But of course, PED and your administration doesn't care at all what Google Classroom says. They only care what Synergy says. So if you turn this off and then just tell students, hey, if you want to know what your overall grade is, go to Student View or have your parents go to Parent View, because Synergy is the official grade book for the district and it's the only grade that counts. I had one teacher who lawyers got involved in things because in Google Classroom, it said the student had an A, and in Synergy, it said the student had a D. And it's because somewhere something went wrong and we never could identify it. And there were lawyers and this and that involved. And in reality, the kid earned a D. But somewhere it said the kid had an A and the parents desperately wanted that to happen. And in the end, Synergy was the grade and that's what it was. But it created a huge headache for this poor teacher. I felt terrible for her. So make sure you do not show overall grade to students. That way, students can still come in and look at their grades and they can still see what they got on their assignments, but they're never going to see what their overall grade is unless they go to Student View and check their Synergy gradebook. Okay, Linda, I see you've got a question.
Yes, is the district looking to go ahead and move towards the standard-based grading by those standards, you know, like when we're giving the master assignments?
To the best of my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, there has not been a... I'm sorry, for some reason you're cutting in and out there. To the best of my knowledge, the district is not planning on going to a standards-based report card for everybody. They're leaving that. I believe each school site has the option of what kind of report card they want to run. I know like a lot of elementary schools are running standards-based report cards, but not all are. I don't know of any high schools that are doing it, and I don't know of any middle schools, though I certainly, with such a large district, it may be happening and I'm unaware. But to the best of my knowledge,
We
there is
are-
no district plan to go that direction.
Okay, we are at Eisenhower, so
Oh, okay.
doing
Oh,
the
well, good to know.
standards-based.
So there is a standards-based middle school, at least one.
Yes,
And
thank you.
you're welcome. Geraldine. Oop, and you might be muted, Geraldine. Geraldine, did you have a question? Oop, I see you're muted. Oh, I still can't hear you. You can always type your question in the chat if you'd like, if that's easier. Uh-oh, we lost her. Are there any other questions or anything? That's the ins and outs of Google Classroom and Synergy Sync. Biggest key is setting it up right the first time and then making sure that you are, again, only creating assignments in Google Classroom. A few other quick tips. Do not use the exact same title twice. Okay, so if you've got something called daily grade that you do every day, make sure it's called daily grade, 7:14. Then tomorrow's is daily grade 7:15. Daily grade 7:16. Because if you just do daily grade over and over and over again, the sync is going to break because Synergy goes, hey, this is happening more than once. I don't know what to do with it. So you can't have names duplicate. Another important note is when you are creating an assignment, go back to my classroom here. When you create an assignment, your description here or your instructions in this part cannot be more than 1,000 characters long. Now that includes spaces and lines and everything. So if your description, your instructions are more than 1,000 lines or 1,000 characters, the sync will break. If you need to include long, detailed instructions, put those instructions in a Google Doc and add it to the assignment. Okay, instruction should really be ideally kept to just a few sentences at best. But keep in mind, if I were to say, one, open the Google Doc, and then I want to drop down, I've just used there a little over 100 characters by just typing one, open the doc, enter, enter. I've created a whole bunch of stuff there because every space is a character according to the way the sync works. So you want to make sure that you don't exceed that 1,000 characters.
So open doc, we can just put open doc.
Right. So you could just say open doc, and then you could add in a Google Doc with all the instructions.
Okay.
So in your instructions, you could say, for detailed instructions, please see the attached Google Doc. And then of course down here, right, I'm not going to pull a Google Doc, but I'll just throw something on here really quick. If my drive will let me. So there, right, that'd be there. And then when students open it, it'd say, please read the Google Docs for detailed instructions. And they could click there and boom, there's the instructions for them to look at. All right. So that's the best way to do it if you've got a lot of detailed instructions. And then just make sure when you give them the instructions that they only have view access and not edit access.